Today we're doing a swatch party and I hope you guys are excited. These are all my single shadows. I asked in my collection videos if you guys wanted to see a swatch party. I got a resounding yes please, let's watch a swatch party. So that is what we are doing today. I hope you are interested. For those of you new here, hello, my name is Donna. I am a lover of all things high and colorful beauty and self-care. I also work for Ulta Beauty as a field leader, so I get a lot of education in my position. I like to bring you that education. Ultimately, I'm out here talking about makeup because I like to talk about makeup. And if you're here, you probably also like to talk about makeup. So let's just get started. Let's do this and let's look at all the beautiful shadows in my collection. I have this palette, which is Cleona. And I have this palette, which includes a little bit of everything, but mostly Sydney Grace and all the colors. So I have like all of the oranges and yellows, and then I have purples and blues, and then I have blues and greens. So we'll walk through those. And then in this palette, I actually have more singles. I don't know what happened to this. I don't know. I accidentally dumped this when I was in my market and I just put everything back in the way I thought it needed to go. Over on this side actually is just these two shadows that we'll look at today. These are all part of the Sydney Grace and Mel's Memory palette. So these aren't actually in my singles collection. These are in my palette collection, if that makes any sense as far as my spreadsheets go. So I need to find another palette like this that will fit all these, because this obviously looks like it'll fit all those, but it absolutely won't. But we will go through these today, and then all of these over here. I'm going to try and do it in segments of color because I think that that makes the most sense. But I will tell you, none of these are going. We're going to do these last because I will be covered in glitter after that. I'm going to pull another tool out. This one is a better tool. I bought this tool for this purpose. I know it's like a facial, like a pimple tool, but I bought it for this purpose because it just goes right in, pops them right out. I'm going to pull these out. Part of the reason for doing this is like my single shadow collection gets severely neglected and I want to do better by my single shadow collection. I'm hoping that I can maybe curate it down. We're going to start with these ones. That's the first page in the one binder. We're going to swatch them all. I might pull some that look similar from each other out. I'm going to like look at the color stories here. I know that I can pull a few from also like this row and this, maybe this one even, into these if I have enough leaving this collection from the book. But honestly, you guys, I have already curated this down quite extensively in the past, so I don't know how many are going to be leaving. I've got no primer or anything on this hand. This one is a Sydney Grace and Lemon Sorbet. That's really pretty. Just an Ofra shade. It doesn't have, there's no name on it. It came out of one of those like big Ofra like glitch palettes, I think they were. Wow, that's a blast from the past, right? The glitch palettes. This also came from the Ofra glitch palette. These are super powdery. That's a really decent orange, but look at how powdery that is. This is Sydney Grace Trapeze. This is Sydney Grace Geese Elaine, mustardy yellow. This is Sydney Grace Lemonade. That's beautiful. This is Sydney Grace Mango Tea. And this is Sydney Grace Sierra Nevada. This is Sydney Grace Funhouse. Wow. This is Sydney Grace Orange Slush. Sydney Grace Hercules, ColourPop Just in Time, Sydney Grace You Have Me, Sydney Grace Berry Fizz, ABH China Rose. That's beautiful. Sydney Grace Strawberries and Cream. Oh, that's so pretty. I know it looks like many of these have not been used, but I just am not super hard on them. And, like, let's be honest, my single shadow collection does get quite neglected. Okay, the last 8 in that page are more like pinkies. This one is Sydney Grace The Chase. This is definitely a pink or a berry. That is pretty. This one is Sydney Grace Your Forever. I think those are so much alike. This one is Balm Cosmetics Bootylicious. It's kind of like coppery. Oh, that's definitely more brown and so powdery. This one is Sydney Grace Cotton Candy. Looks like that. That's pretty. This one is Sydney Grace Raspberry Sorbet. Those 3 look so similar. This one is ColourPop Pinky Promise. That is very smooth, actually. This one is The Ballet by Sydney Grace. That's beautiful. And then this one is ABH Intense Gaze. Okay, so that is the first page of the book. I can already see we have a little bit of redundancy here. I first want to swatch this one. This one is a single shadow that I got in Ipsy at some point. It is Hikari Fierce, and I kept it for whatever reason. That might be the reason. That is actually really pretty. Kind of like an orangey red. Oh, that's so pretty. I also want to like look at some from here. So let's look at this one here. Sydney Grace Chocolate Raspberry Fudge. Nope, that's very brown. What about this one? This one is Sydney Grace Voila. No, that's also brown. This is Makeup Geek Cocoa Bear. You guys know this is old. Also brown and powdery. Sydney Grace Swing Dance. Also brown. Okay. This one is Sydney Grace Together Forever. Oh, that's interesting. Kind of a rose water, but I think it's very similar to that one. Let's look at these up close and personal. You know, when I look at this one, I do think it's pretty, but it's not as like impactful as I love my like shimmers to be. And I think I would pull for this one that's kind of got a similar feel, but less like yellow and more pinky than this one. And I honestly don't think I'll regret it because this is that Ofra shadow out of the Glitch palette. And I don't really love these shadows, if I'm honest with you. I think that it is just kind of a dull shimmer compared to the rest of the shimmers on my arm. I think this orange one right underneath it could probably go too, because I think that this shade and this shade are this one combined. And I think I kept this one because it has a little bit of shimmeriness to it, but honestly, again, it's not as shimmery as I like my shadows to be. And this orange is more impactful, and there's just so many other great like orange shimmers in here. So I do think that I can get rid of that one as well. These two oranges are very, very similar as well, but I do think that I want to keep both. One is this one here, which is super orange, and one has a little bit more yellow in it and shows up a little bit more mustard. So it's these two. And I think actually these would be very complementary in an eye look because they're just slightly different enough. Like this one could blend out the other one. I think, you know, for the most part, all of those are very different. I don't know. Maybe I could get rid of that one too, which is this one. Just in Time by ColourPop. Yeah, you know what? That can go also because that one is so old, to be honest. It's just not as impactful as it used to be. And I've got these kind of shades in almost every single palette, right? So we got rid of this one and this one and this one. These two, I think, look incredibly similar. I know they look so similar, but one's a little bit more brick red and the other one is a little bit more berry. I do want to keep them both. These two, stunning, right? Then we have all of these berries. These two are more pink. These two are more red. I mean, I don't know that I need to keep them both, but I think I'm gonna move this one because it's a little more like rosy. I wonder what about this one? Supposedly more purple. This is Sydney Gray's Storybook Ending. Yeah, it's definitely kind of mauvey. These two from the purples page, and we move them in here. Yeah, that's definitely a rose. And that one is definitely like a coral. So these two are Sydney Grace Relentless Beauty and Sydney Grace French Hens. So this is my page. I think not a whole lot changed, but I mean, it's still yellows, oranges, and pinks. But I think we've got almost all of them on this page now, and we decluttered 3 of the 24 that were on here. Okay, next is purples. So I'm going to take all these out. And of course at the bottom of this we have some blues too, which blues and greens are in the next section as well. And we have some purples in here as well. So let's just look at these guys. This one is Sydney Grace Rogue. That is stunning. This is one of the Ulfra colors, and it is just a baby pink. This is Sydney Grace Dear Reader. Oh, so pretty. This is Sydney Grace Temptalia. Purples and greens. This is ColourPop Glass Bowl. ColourPop Snake Eyes. Sydney Grace Oil Painting. This is Sydney Grace Twisted Shifter. I bought this one separately. This is one of their multi-chromes. That is like literally one of the only single shadows that I've bought in my collection, besides the Cleona ones. Most of the Sydney Grace shadows came to me via Christmas in July, like mystery bundles. And then like these ones came in, the Ofra ones came in palettes. This one is Pink Water by Sydney Grace. And this one is Strawberry Shortcake, also by Sydney Grace. Ofra Ultraviolet. That is so powdery, but pretty. This one is Sydney Grace Totally Worth It. Sydney Grace Gumdrop. Sydney Grace As If. What? Sydney Grace Flannel. Sydney Grace Jolly. I think I want to pause on the blues because I have plenty of purples over in the other palette that we can use to fill this page. We have this one, which is Sydney Grace Wintertime. That is so light. Sydney Grace Petal. And then, let's see. Sydney Grace Storybook Ending. We swatched this one a minute ago. It is kind of like a mauve. And then this one is one of the Ofra shades. God, those are just so powdery. Sydney Grace Charming Chaos. Oh, that is more gray. This is Sydney Grace Mittens, which I think is more of like a deep brown. Sydney Grace City Life. That's also kind of gray, but also lavender. I think it should go in here. This is just an off-brand. I don't know what brand it is. It doesn't have anything on the bottom. I didn't mark it back in the day. This one needs to go. I don't know what that is, but there's definitely a lack of pigmentation there. And it's kind of patchy, to be honest. ColourPop Dragonfly. I mean, I think that's more brownie. This one is Sydney Grace Mystery. Oh yeah, this one definitely belongs with the purples. It's kind of duochromy, but like ultraviolet. My camera stopped recording. I already took all the swatches off of my arms because I thought I was recording. I do have 2 more spaces here, and I'm really not sure what to put in here because I don't have any more like purple singles, but I do think that I could, because this one is such a deep dark purple, if I put maybe this color. Ooh, that's pretty. That could sway in here. What about this one? Yeah, I think I'll put these 2 in here because they're kind of blue, kind of purple. I think I can get rid of this one. I think it is old and dried out. Yep, getting rid of that. I have one more slot. Yeah. That is our purple section. And I don't really think there's any redundancy in there. Maybe between these 2 purples. This purple is so blackened that I think I might put it towards the end. And then we have the purple section, what it looks like currently. These are all the blues and greens, and then I have some greens in here and some blues right here. I don't know how this is all gonna work out. I might get rid of this guy. Yep, let's go through this first. These are all my greens and blues. This is Sydney Grace JB, Sydney Grace Polar Bear, Sydney Grace Nightfall, Sydney Grace Pensacola, and then one of the little ochre shadows in like just our cornflower blue. I think these 2 look incredibly similar, and this one is the better version, so I am gonna declutter that one. This is Sydney Grace Oasis ColourPop Baseline. It's right over my wrist, so it's not wanting to swatch very well. This one is ABH Icy. That's a little green. Maybe it's like baby blue. Sydney Grace Perfect Storm. Sydney Grace Carousel. Sydney Grace Mint Chocolate Chip. And Sydney Grace Perfect Vacation. Sydney Grace Scuba Diver. Elizabeth Mott Mermaid Teal. This one I got, I think, in an Ipsy. Sydney Grace Below Zero. Wow. ColourPop Formation. I don't know where all these ColourPop ones came from. Sydney Grace Megalodon. Sydney Grace South Lake. Sydney Grace Shallows. Sydney Grace Tempest. Sydney Grace Celebrate. ColourPop Tea Garden. Sydney Grace, I think it's Abby's. And Sydney Grace Kiss Me I'm Irish. Sydney Grace Crushing Waves, really deep dark blue. Sydney Grace Big Top, a little bit of a blue green. Sydney Grace Ice Fishing. We have Sydney Grace Dessert Spoon. Sydney Grace Evergreen. Sydney Grace Sea Breeze. And this one is out of the Laura Sanchez Moods palette. I'm not sure what the name of the color is. I do think that this one and this one, the difference in color is just very, very minimal. This is the Sydney Grace one. And this is the Moods collection one. I think they give the same vibe, and I honestly believe I would use this one over this one. This one is a little bit more dark and moody, so I do think that I'm going to get rid of the Moods one. I'm thinking this one or this one. These two navies are super, super similar too. I think I want to look at these two navies closer. Oh yeah, they're completely different. Pull in this one. Yeah, they're completely different. What about these two greens? They look very, very similar. I mean, I honestly don't think I would wear this green. Not like grungy green. It's so easy though. It's such an easy, I think I'll keep it. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna keep these, but I'm also gonna go get my other palette that's like this one. And I am gonna take all these out and I'm gonna put them into that palette. Brand new Adept palette. Brand new. And I know that this palette fits all the shadows that are in this book, I do believe. Oh, this is gonna be the longest video on the planet. So I am gonna put all of these blues into this side. And then I'm gonna flip it and I'm gonna put the purples into the other side and we'll see where we're at. Look at that. This is my pinks, purples, blues, and greens single shadows. This is what I have left. I do think that I would love it if these could fit in here also, but they won't. So I'm gonna leave this as it is. There is a spot for 3 extra, but I do think that I'll put this in here. So that's what we look like right now, and that is my new Adept palette that I purchased eons ago. So it now serves a purpose in my collection. Okay, we're gonna keep on trucking because at the end of the day, I'm gonna be able to fit these into here and I'm not gonna need this anymore. And I think that that'll be great. Again, I'm not gonna go through the shadows in here because this is a Sydney Grace palette. And I just want to find a single Z palette for those guys. But these are all my neutral tones. So, you know, whites, grays. I have that one, which is just a, oh, that one's gold. I think that should be in with the yellows, if I'm honest with you. This one was Ofra. This one is also a no name, but it is just a cream shadow. And then this one is Sydney Grace Milk and Cookies. And it is also just a white. This one is a silver chrome shade. This is Mellow Metallica is what it is called. This one is the Ofra. I am gonna get rid of that. This one is Sydney Grace Black Ice. It's beautiful charcoal. This one is Sydney Grace Mind Blown, the matte version of that. I do love those two shades. This is Sydney Grace New Moon. That is gorgeous pewter. This is ColourPop Dragonfly. ColourPop Let's Do It, which is just a black. And I always think it's good. I mean, this one is super kind of patchy, let's be honest. I think it's kind of patchy, but I also think it's a really good deepening up shade for like just my singles collection. This one is Crescent Moon by Sydney Grace. This one is Ofra French Mocha. This one is ColourPop Boxer. This is so old, but really kind of stunning. This is Barcelona Beach by Makeup Geek. A really great transition shade or blending out shadow. Sydney Grace Charming Chaos. This one is Sydney Grace Mittens. Sydney Grace Chocolate Raspberry Fudge. Kind of orangey. This one is Cocoa Bear by Makeup Geek. This one is Swing Dance by Sydney Grace. Voila by Sydney Grace. And this one is Journey Home by Sydney Grace. Voila. Journey Home. I don't really think I have a whole lot of redundancy there, so. This is what I ended up with for the neutrals that go into this palette. This book of shades right now is completely empty. These ones are the ones that I got rid of. At the end of the day, when I get a new palette for the Sydney Grace shadows that are in here for the In Mel's Memory, I will have one full side and some slots that are empty for single shadows. Not that I need those slots, but these I'm getting rid of. So the next ones that we'll go through are the Cleona ones. I'm going to go through the shadows that were in here, which were my Cleona Cosmetics shadows. You can see this is empty and all of the shadows are here. None of them are going anywhere. I'm going to swatch them for you though and tell you what the names of them are so that you guys can see them. We have Sandblast, Forge, Bloodline, Opulent, Flame Blown, Rosette, Royalty, Regal, Tower, Crown Jewel, Oculus, Anneal, Trefoil, Embroidery, Keystone, Carving, Ochre. These were all from the Jeweled collection. This one is just one of their regular shadows. It's a shimmer shadow and it is called Caribou, and it is one of the shadows that was sent as a, or it is the shadow that was sent as a free gift with this order. So those are all of the multi-chromes from Cleona. And it doesn't look like multi-chromes in the screen, I'm noticing, but I'm going to take a picture and see if I can't get a picture in here from different angles so that you guys can see the colors in here. So let's put them in there real quick. All right, those are my Cleona shadows. So just to recap, we took everything out of this book and we put everything in to this one because they all fit. And we also have the Cleona shadows, and these are the ones that we decluttered. I mean, it's not a whole lot, but I also am not unhappy with the fact that I got it all into one book. We didn't get them all into one. I forgot about these guys in here, but we got them into two duos. This one is the Sydney Grace shadows, so I didn't even look at those guys. These are what we are decluttering, and those are the Sydney Gray shadows. So I didn't want to leave the video lying to y'all. I'm really happy with how we ended up. Please let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed my swatch party. Let me know what you think about my singles and the swatches. And I know that there's probably more that I could have gotten rid of, but I don't want to. So there's that. I thank you all so much for just being here. If you're here till the end, you're truly some of my favorite people. You enjoy playing with the shadows with me, and leave me a purple heart so that I know that you've been here the whole time. Thank you guys again so much for joining me. I hope that you and yours are well. I hope that you are all safe and healthy and getting along as best you can. I hope you're enjoying some sunshine, because I am not enjoying any sunshine. And with that all being said, I hope that you love each other, but love each other from afar. And until next time, bye friends.